Anon, A Futile and Stupid Gesture, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Brisgby Bear and Extinction, all coming up next on the Movie Burner Blog Rundown. And as ever, I am on my lonesome this week, so I will do my best to go through these films that have all been posted up on the Movie Burner blog over the last week. We will be starting with Anon, as I did say. It's a very difficult name to actually say, surprisingly. Short for anonymous, I would presume. This is from 2018, and it was written, the movie review that is, by our writer-in-chief, Darrin Gauthier. This is a film that was directed by Andrew Nichol, and it stars a very decent cast of Clive Owen, Afia Bennett, Morgan Allen and Amanda Seyfried. And the concept is very simple. In a world without anonymity or crime, a detective meets a woman who threatens their security. Now, this is a film which I don't believe got a widespread release. It was a Netflix release. Pretty sure it was a Netflix release. And you look at the Rotten Tomatoes rating, the tomato meter. Top critics 40%, all critics 39%, an average rating of 5.3 out of 10. It's been rated rotten. An audience score of 35%, just 2.8 out of 5 on average. So they're all pretty much in agreement that this is an average to below average affair. And some of the reviews, because I haven't seen this film, from Rotten Tomatoes say Anon's storyline is forgettable, and the movie ends with an unsatisfying mixture of confusion and predictability. The script's heady intent proves to be exhausting, reducing a third act twist to a shoulder shrug. And a seemingly profound final line about life off of a grid into a blank expression. That's two negative ones. I'll speak about a couple of positive ones now to try and lighten the tone before I get into Darrin's thoughts. A couple of slightly better reviews. One from Leah Greenblatt of Entertainment Weekly says the story works well enough in its own moodily familiar way, but it's not only the movie's palette that's stylishly leached of colour. Is that positive? I don't know. Richard Royper of Chicago Sun-Times says, now we can add Seyfried's confident and subtle work as a character known only as the girl in Anon. A slick and satisfying mind trip of a sci-fi murder mystery. So that sounds actually like a fairly interesting affair. When you actually do go into Darrin's review, he says he watched the film because of Owen, Clive Owen that is, Seyfried and Nichol, so he was drawn in by the cast, which is something that would have probably caught my eye as well, in truth. He says that they haven't done much lately to get me excited, but there was enough there to get me to watch, and that's thoughts that I would certainly echo and agree with. He says it ended up on Netflix as an exclusive. He doesn't say that's good or bad, purely that it is new content, and that if you see these actors linked to a Netflix release, you will click the play button, and again I'd agree with that. I've spoken endlessly about Netflix hit rate or ratio between good and bad releases and their new and original content, and I find it's usually somewhere between the 60 to 40% mark. 60% of it is utter shite, 40% of it is usually quite good. Some would argue it may be closer to 50-50, but they have released some intriguing new films over the last few years or so, and they're getting better and better as time goes on. We of course spoke about Netflix on various topics in previous shows, about them hoovering up talent, producing talent and writing talent from big studios like Disney, so they'll only get better and better as time goes on and expand out in some of their filmmaking techniques and directions they go. One thing you can't criticise Netflix for is allowing a degree of freedom to filmmakers of various different skill sets and degrees of experience. He goes on to say that it is a noir film to a degree, a good dark detective story, and sadly we don't get many of anymore. It's a sentiment I also agree with. I'm a big fan of detective stories and noir films and TV series. As a big fan of Columbo back in the day. I wouldn't say that was a noir series, but it was certainly a detective story, which is why I was so excited about Murder on the Orient Express last year and its reasonable box office performance, and it was why The Nice Guys from last year too was one of my favourite films, because it was a noir film which shook up the genre and added a degree of modernity to it all. He says that whilst Anon does a good job of setting up a world and its characters, the main characters do fit into a film noir world. They're sad, broken and have major flaws. Now, whilst I can't echo or agree with those sentiments because I haven't seen the film, it's something that you do need in a good noir film. I thought The Nice Guys was a good noir film, and the reason for that was purely because of the characters. Ryan Gosling was a broken man in that film. Russell Crowe's character, also a broken man in the film. And when you get these disjointed and discombobulated guys floating around trying to solve mysteries and do good or bad, it only adds to the whole experience exponentially to me. He says Owen's fine, he's got a stock character to play and he does what is required, but he's better than this. He does do dark and brooding well though, and I'd agree with that. I'm actually quite a big fan of Clive Owen. He's been in a lot of very good films, a lot of crap films as well, but get a decent hit rate. Some of the things he didn't like though, he says it was a boring misfire, and I know that sounds harsh, but really this film doesn't even try to do something different. This is your stock murder mystery. Sure, it fits into the subgenre of is she the killer or not? Oh, and the detective falls for her. And yes, that is a subgenre, and actually this film is a Sea of Love with a sci-fi twist. If not, that'd be a positive thing right away, because Sea of Love was a very good film, of course, starring Al Pacino. If it was even a fraction of the calibre of that film, then you'd be on to a winner, but general consensus seems to be disagreeing with that. Sadly, may echo many of the plot points, but clearly not up to the same degree of quality as that film. It does mention previously that Andrew Niccol was living off of Gattaca, a good movie. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce that movie, incidentally. I have seen it, but I still don't know whether that's how you say the name. But he says that he's the director that's living in the past and that he's never really bettered that film. That was a career high, if you like. And whilst I would agree with that, I would also give a shout out to Lord of War from 2005 as well, the Nick Cage film. I thought that was a very good film about arms dealing and whatnot. Finally though, he says it's not a terrible film. If you like the actors, give it a watch. It just really did nothing for me, and I had a hard time keeping myself interested in the film and the story. He's given it a 4 out of 10, so again, really echoing many of the sentiments of the other people who have watched this film. It's a below average experience in the main. It's a crime, mystery, sci-fi though. I like all of those genres, and you'd think bring them together it would be a fairly decent affair, certainly with the acting chops of Clive Owen in there, but sadly it seems like it wasn't to be. Genres didn't mix together well, and it came off as a bit of a meh experience in the main, so that's a shame. But I don't know if I'd give it a watch myself to really make my mind up one way or the other. Probably wouldn't in the end, I would have thought, because I have got so much to watch anyway, and trying to fit another film into it is difficult, certainly when it's got such average to poor ratings. But I'm going to move on to the next film, and it's A Futile and Stupid Gesture from 2018. This one was reviewed by Philip Henry and written by Michael Colt and John Abwood and based on a book by Josh Karp. It stars Will Forte, Domhnall Gleeson and Martin Mull. And again, this is a Netflix original. Philip starts his review by actually mentioning that they're pumping a lot of money into creating original content for the channel, and he has a sly little pop at sci-fi, saying that they spare no expense with the projects they greenlight, and that is certainly true, as I did mention, and as I will mention towards the end of this blog, because it's a lot of Netflix heavy films in this week's blog. They do offer an opportunity to filmmakers, various different degrees of skill and experience. You have some well-renowned directors stepping in there and restoring classic films, doing their own things, and then you'll have lesser known figures jumping in and getting a chance to helm a feature-length film without any of the pressures of having to worry about box office success and stuff like that, and maybe getting their wings clipped and slapped down and told you can't do this because this won't mix with demographics. They can do what they want. They get a degree of freedom. I've heard Kevin Smith mention that time and time again. It's one of the big positives of working with Netflix. They give you an open blank canvas, so that may be a big positive for this film. Again, I haven't seen it though. This is going to be a recurring theme throughout. I think I've only seen one of the films in this week's Movie Burner blog, but this is an intriguing story. It's a biopic set in the 1970s and the 1980s, based on Douglas Kenny, a man who many people might not know off the top of their heads. He was a founder and co-creator of National Lampoon, not the film, but a magazine, campus magazine, which then transforms into a major media organisation in time. This is a guy that went on to write films like Caddyshack and even Animal House, two absolute classic comedy films from the 1970s, late 1970s and early 1980s. Therefore, mentioned Caddyshack being one of my all-time favourite comedies from that decade. It was a tragic figure. Douglas Kenny sadly took his own life at the relatively young age of 33. He was a very troubled man who had to deal with substance abuse and so on and so forth. but a very intriguing character nonetheless, and one befitting of having a biopic about his life put to screen. No surprise though that it did end up on Netflix, because purely, as I did say, he isn't a widespread or renowned figure. Someone say his name and you immediately think, oh my god, this is this guy. But an interesting life nonetheless, and Phil says that you get a lot of fun out of it. It was an entertaining, inspiring and informative, funny biopic with some serious themes being explored behind the laughter, and I think that's always important in films of this nature here. Studying a man who also took his life at a fairly young age, an interesting and creative mind who had clear mental problems or troubles in his life, and there's always an opportunity to fit in powerful thematic messages in there to maybe help out someone else in a situation like that themselves in the current day, who may get something out of it, make it a bit of inspiration from the man's life and also the tragic end that befell him. But he says that obviously the magazine was a huge hit, amusing and offending in equal numbers. The first thing that springs to my mind is the satirical magazine that is Charlie Hebdo, which was obviously the target of a terrorist atrocity a couple of years back. French magazine, they don't give a shit who they offend, they target all race, creeds, religion, and they turn it to their own satirical ends, and this seems like this was a similar magazine, one that I wasn't fully aware of. When I think of National Lampoon, my first mind is always on Chevy Chase and also those great films and some not so great films from the 1980s. Interestingly, he wasn't involved in the actual National Lampoon franchise, though obviously having worked with Chevy Chase on Caddyshack, that was maybe a big inspiration for them. He says that Kenny was obviously a restless and unhappy soul, ever trying to seek his father's approval and trying to fill the hole in the family left by his deceased brother. You can't help but wonder if much of this was a cry for attention from someone perpetually stuck in adolescence. Forte's portrayal of him is spot on, making him by turns a whirlwind of creativity and a frustrated depressive. You tend to find that's the case with these creative folks, the likes of Robin Williams and stuff. The funny creative minds tend to be the ones that are afflicted with deep personal issues underneath the facade of happiness. It goes on to say that the film's well directed with some great transitions, and one scene even done as a photo story like those used in magazines, giving the filmic equivalent of the chaotic and ramshackle feel of the magazine. All in all, I'm gibbering away a little bit here, but I do find this to be a very interesting story. Going to Rotten Tomatoes, top critics not really agreeing with that sentiment, 38%, but what the hell do they know, all critics 64%. They've rated it fresh, and it's got an audience score of 70%, just 457 user ratings, probably echoing what I said earlier about this being a kind of a peripheral lost figure. You look at the cast, and the names that really spring out would be the aforementioned Will Forte and also Domhnall Gleeson. Forte does look as though he's embodying the figure of Douglas Kenny. He looks eerily bang on with the long straggly hair and the glasses. But as someone who's not actually seen the film, I can't really go into any great detail as to the cinematic benefits one way or the other, whether it's good or not. If you look at the critics, they say it's ultimately anything but pointless, exploring an important moment in pop culture through the life of a man who captured its essence, as well as the people who made him an institution. And then you get the polar opposite of that, saying that a futile and stupid gesture feels like a quick tour of a man's greatest hits that relies on his accomplishments rather than any storytelling artistry to impress the audience, which is all well and good, but when you're as I mentioned, a fairly peripheral figure, it's difficult not to go through the greatest hits in someone's life when you're doing a biopic. It's a difficult balance to strike, but I digress. I'm going to move on to the next film, and it's Ant-Man and the Wasp from, of course, this year, directed by Peyton Reed, written by Chris McKenna, Eric Sommers, starring Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Michael Pena and Michael Douglas. This review was written by Dave Anderson, and of course this is the latest addition to the MCU, coming hot on the heels of Avengers Infinity War and the immensely successful Black Panther. This is a more lighter, easygoing affair, not so cosmic, more human scale in its antagonist and storytelling, and it really does just follow Scott Lang as he's balancing being a superhero and a father, and also a house arrest after the events of Civil War, with trying to help and aid Hope Van Dyne and Dr. Hank Pym on an urgent mission into the quantum realm to try and find also the mother and the wife figure that is Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. Dave has given us a fairly brief review by his standards. He usually writes quite long and thought-provoking efforts. And this is still a fairly thought-provoking effort, such as the man's writing ability. He starts the review by actually using a fantastic analogy to describe how Ant-Man and the Wasp is fitting into the current MCU and this year as a whole in terms of Marvel releases. He hits the nail on the head perfectly in the first paragraph by saying that when heavy metal was at the height of its popularity, most bands would be counted on to include at least one power ballad on each album. A relatively quiet song that was seldom the best tune on the record but got the most radio airplay and had fans whipping out their lighters during a concert. The power ballad also served as an important aesthetic purpose, offering a brief respite from the sonic fury of the rest of the album. For example, smack dab in the middle of Metallica's Ride the Lightning is a song called Fade to Black. While still heavier than anything Poison ever recorded, it was a sort of breather from the constant speed and intensity of surrounding songs. He goes on to say that as films in the MCU grow longer and louder and interestingly epic, the Ant-Man films are sort of like Marvel's power ballads, and he's absolutely bang on. You've had three very interesting, distinct releases this year from Marvel. I would say that Black Panther was closer to Ant-Man and the Wasp in that vein, and that it was a more introspective and quieter film, certainly a little bit more grander in its storytelling in the sense of it being in Wakanda and jetting off to the likes of Korea, and just it had some big epic set pieces too, but certainly for me much closer to Ant-Man and the Wasp. Then of course you had Infinity War, which was just galactic in its scale. It had about 30 superheroes facing off against Thanos and the Black Order, and it was just utterly crazy in terms of it being a big bombastic action laden film and a real culmination of 10 years of hard work. He's right here, Ant-Man and the Wasp is the, again, reined back, quieter, more human level, street level film. It's a perfect break in tone and pace from the frenetic Infinity War. It takes things back to a nice even keel, gives us a break and a breather after the events and the finger click and stuff like that, and just the serious implications that brings for the MCU and the wider galaxy in the future. Not that it does skimp on spectacle, as Dave does say, because certainly the story does have some epic moments as well. You've got a lot of action, a lot of use of shrinking technology and expanding technology as well, and we have some great moments, certainly when you go into the quantum realm and stuff like that. Visually it's stunning, the action's great. I thought it was better than the original in many ways. Very funny film. I just think Paul Rudd is perfectly made for the role of Scott Lang, and also Evangeline Lilly plays off him perfectly. The chemistry is great. Michael Penn is a fantastic side comedy character who lightens the tone throughout various darker stretches of a film, not that there's many in this film. Walton Goggins I thought was absolutely outstanding as Sonny Birch, the side periphery antagonist, whilst Hannah John Kamen was excellent. It's quite a complicated and primary antagonist that was Ghost. You know what you're getting with Michael Douglas, and also you then get Lawrence Fishburne in there, and a glorified cameo. It's essentially an extended cameo. He has a couple of great moments. He was a jilted ex-partner or a work colleague of Hank Pym, and he has his moments too. He does go on to say, and he's absolutely right again, Dave, that it is more human scale and grounded, and it's a more personal film with realistically flawed characters. He's bang on as well on what he says about Paul Rudd's Scott Lang being a guy that screws up just as much as he has success, and also mentioning that most of the supporting that characters aid and are integral to the plot as the story plays out. He finishes up his review by saying that whilst it may not be amongst one of the most essential entries in the franchise, like the first Ant-Man, it's a welcome change of pace, and that even fanboys do need a breather, or an occasional breather, and he's absolutely right, they do. Thoroughly enjoyed the film. It was different from the other two releases this year, and it had its own artistic merits, and there was great performances throughout. The story was more human scale, as I've said about 50 times already, and that was definitely needed after the cosmic and grander scale of Infinity War. It was a great change of pace, and it had some fantastic moments in it. One of my favourite standalone films to date was the original Ant-Man film, so for this to come in and effectively better it for me was a very good surprise indeed. But I'm going to move on to the next film, and it's Brisgby Bear from 2017. This was reviewed once again by Philip Henry. He's been on a roll this week, and it was directed by Dave McCarry, written by Kevin Costello and Kyle Mooney, and also stars Kyle Mooney, Mark Hamill of Luke Skywalker fame, and Claire Danes. Philip says he stumbled upon this film via an online list of best films you haven't seen, which apparently he does get some enjoyment out of reading through, because it will put his mind onto maybe some hidden indie gems that have passed under the multiplex radar, and he's absolutely right. I've done that many a time as well, certainly with foreign language films and whatnot. You won't hear a lot about in the mainstream media. They'll not pop up in a major cinema in a big cinematic release. I've stumbled across films like Sophie Shaw, The Innocents, Land of Mine, through the exact same method that Philip has explored here, and what he says about the film has definitely got me intrigued, to say the least. It's getting very good reviews on IMDb, 7.4 out of 10, and you go into Rotten Tomatoes and it's much the same story. 77% from top critics, 80% from all critics, and there's a lot of reviews been put in, 146, and the audience score as well echoes those sentiments. 3,876 reviews or ratings, and 86% of a percentage score. That is very, very good indeed. The plot itself is about, after being freed from his life in an underground bunker, a man sets out to make a movie of the only TV show he has ever known, which is of course Brisgby Bear. Philip Henry he does a great review here discussing the film, breaking it down for someone like me who's not seen it. He says that Mark Hamill plays this guy who lives in a subterranean home in the middle of a desert with his family, typecasting. Well, yeah, he did do that in a galaxy far, far away in the middle of Tatooine with a family that he didn't like in a desert setting, so yeah, a bit of typecasting in there. He then goes on to say the only difference is they live a totally isolated life, no internet, no TV, and no outside contact. As I've told their son, his whole life, that the outside air is toxic. That brings up and conjures up visions of Cloverfield, 10 Cloverfield Lane, where there's a pack of lies being told, and it all comes crumbling down, although slightly later on in that film than it does in this, it appears. He goes on to say James is 25 years old, and his only exposure to pop culture is a kids' TV show called Brisgby. And also when he then breaks out of this confined, claustrophobic existence via police turning up one day and bringing the whole Truman Show existence to a crashing end, he's then thrust out into mainstream society to stand on his own legs, and he's reunited with his real parents. And the story then fleshes out this guy trying to find his way in a world that's completely alien to him. And he does this and uses the making of a film about Brisgby Bear and completing the story that he was obviously invested in and never get a chance to finish. He uses that as a coping mechanism of sorts, whilst slipping the feet into the doors of the bigger, wider world that is modern day planet Earth. It says that most movies would cue a funny montage of James seeing all the wonders of our world and not understanding them, but he does say that this is not that movie style. It shirks that, and that whilst he does go on the odd party or two and he does have sexual encounters and stuff and goes to the cinema and sees his first movie, that it is more about him focusing on finishing this story, that it's a very sweet world in this film. He's not ridiculed, he's not bullied, he's fairly accepted by people who love his innocence and naivety. He says that there's deeper themes being explored here, as you would imagine, that maybe about obsessive fans locking themselves up and binge watching on things like Netflix these days, that you can go outside, shut that, and have a richer life experience with people who share your passion. And that's very true indeed, very, very true. Tonally speaking, he says it's closest to Napoleon Dynamite, which was a very similar film about a bit of a whack job who was struggling to fit in with modern day society. He says it's an oddity of a film, but it's a nice low-key film about following your dreams and not conforming to what everyone else thinks you should be, and that he really enjoyed it. And certainly, reading that review and looking at some of the other critical responses, this is a film which I would probably get something out of myself. It's something that's right up my street, and I would definitely be looking to give it a watch at some point. I haven't seen it though, so I can't really talk much more about that. So I'm going to move on to the final film in this week's Movie Burner blog, and it's Extinction from this year, reviewed by Darrin Gauthier again, and it's directed by Ben Young, written by Spencer Cohen and Brad Kane, and it stars Michael Pena again, connecting into obviously Ant-Man and the Wasp, Lizzie Kaplan and Amelia Crouch. And the plot is about a father having a recurring dream of losing his family. His nightmare turns into reality when the planet is invaded by a force bent on destruction. Fighting for their lives, he comes to realise an unknown strength to keep them safe from harm. Now, in terms of ratings, this film's got a 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb. Rotten Tomatoes is giving it 37% from all critics. Top critics haven't found it worth their while to watch it. More the fools them. And the audience score is 48%. So again, this is a fairly average experience for the overwhelming majority of people who have seen it. You look at some of the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, a B movie with a blockbuster attitude and not in a fun way. Whatever do they mean? That's from Roger Ebert. Chauncey K. Robinson, the Twisted Girl Next Door, I don't know what the hell that is. I'm presuming that's an audience member, not a critic. She says that it's probably for the best that this movie went to Netflix and not to the theatres. It lacked the spark to fill a huge room. Many films do. That doesn't mean they're bad in any way, shape or form. Someone else is on to say from the Daily Journal that Extinction is sure to thrill, shock, surprise and impress if you're a science fiction fan, but I don't care what these people are saying. I care what Darrin's saying. And Darrin has given it a 7 out of 10. He got some enjoyment out of it. He says that he watched it because it was a Netflix exclusive. He's seen a poster and that was it. He went in blind, knowing that he really did like Michael Pena, but not so much Lizzie Kaplan. That was his mindset when he went in to watch the film. Random Thoughts says that he thinks every character actor should get at least one kick at the can as a lead in this film, and Pena was getting his kick at the can in this film. And I completely agree with what he says about Michael Pena being a very underrated actor with a decent range. He can do a whole host of genres, comedy, drama, and he can also star as side periphery figures in superhero films like the aforementioned Ant-Man and the Wasp. He's a very good actor, and I'm glad to see he was getting his shot at leading this film. It's an intriguing film, much like the previous film I was talking about. It gives me heavy hints of Cloverfield when I read through it, mixed with a dose of Knowing, starring Nicolas Cage, where you've got these premonitions and all hell breaking loose slowly but surely throughout the world, and then it takes a turn and a bringe into sci-fi round about the middle to the end of the film, aka what happened in 10 Cloverfield Lane. And incidentally, Lizzie Kaplan was in Cloverfield, so there's another connection. He says that this film was heavily marketed on the sci-fi elements, but it took those elements a while to become fully introduced, so you have to be patient watching it. He also says that the first act of the film, or the first third, was a boring and uninteresting affair, that he nearly fell asleep, but that he stuck with it, and he's glad that he did, because towards the middle to the end, the film came into its own, introduced bigger, grander sci-fi sort of a set pieces, and it had a big twist in the middle that he doesn't spoil, and I'm glad he doesn't, because I will watch this, which changed the whole film and set it up to be a better, more enjoyable experience. He says Pena's performance, he doesn't go over the top, he's quiet, he's quite sombre, and it utilises silence very well at various moments in the film. He doesn't go over the top or do any big show foreshadowing with this performance. He deals with the twist as we do, and it effectively leads the film for large chunks, and he does it with relative ease. Finally, he does say that whilst he's not a Lizzie Kaplan fan, he doesn't like her style of acting. She was just fine here, but that he didn't buy into her and Pena as a husband and wife. I've had that in many a film, most recently Allied, Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard. I felt they had zero chemistry. Other people disagreed, but I thought they were crap. They didn't have chemistry and it wasn't realistic, so you'll get that in films from time to time, but also you need the story to then overpower that and take your mind away from the crap chemistry and have you focus on the other things going on. And it's clear to me that that's been the case with Darrin here. He says it's not a perfect film, but that it's well written and that it's a fraught, provoking sci-fi film, well worth seeing. So listen, it's on Netflix. I may give it a bash because I'm into sci-fi films, always have been. And once again, I've been mentioning this throughout this whole episode of the Movie Burner Blog Rundown. Again, Netflix as a platform is fantastic for offering inexperienced young directors a chance and a pop at doing their own thing, creating their own story, gives them freedom to do whatever the hell they want, and then they can put it on this platform and it gets consumed by people who don't have to worry about going out and spending hard-earned cash and popcorn and whatnot and maybe traipsing the family out to go and see it in the cinema. They can just sit on their sofa watch it on the iPad or on the TV, and it gives guys like this a chance to do their thing. This is a young director, Ben Young. He's not had a huge amount of directing gigs. He directed a few episodes of Trapped, Castaway, and mostly TV shows. So out with this and Hounds of Love, he's a relative newcomer, and hopefully this will set him on the way to becoming a very decent director in the future. But I have not got much more to add to this because I haven't seen the film, but it's intriguing. Despite the mismatch of reviews, it seems to be an average affair, and just with the ease of consuming it on Netflix, I probably would go and give it a bash. But that brings us to the end of this week's episode of the Movie Burner Blog Rundown, where we discuss all the latest reviews going up on the Movie Burner blog. I'd just like to thank you for listening once again, and I'll be back tomorrow with the Force Friday show.
Remember guys, if you enjoyed that episode, then do hit that like button, comment below, and maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. If you want to follow us on social media for all the latest updates from Movie Burner Entertainment, then we can be found on Twitter and Facebook at Movie Burners. You can also listen to us on Google Play and iTunes at the Movie Burner Podcast. And last but not least, if you want to access all the latest written reviews and the occasional article, then that can be found on our website at movieburnerentertainment.org. Until the next time, goodbye.